Day after day, you run headlong into resistance to your efforts to be more innovative. The resistance comes from your coworkers, your boss, your family, and even yourself. So how do you fight against it? I'll be right back.
This is the Killer Innovations Podcast with Phil McKinney. Keep in mind that the information and opinions expressed in this podcast are Phil's, and Phil's alone, and they don't necessarily reflect those of his past, current, or future employers. Now, here's Phil McKinney.
The resistance that you feel when trying to be more innovative comes from a variety of different sources. It can come from your coworkers, your boss, your family members, and even yourself trying to talk you out of taking that risk. Now, the fundamental structure or the fundamental reason around this resistance is what I would call FUD. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Now, FUD is a common term used within sales organizations. It's a way to actually get a customer to inject doubt into their minds to not buy your competitors' products. Now, the same applies when you're trying to sell your innovation, whether you're coming up with a new idea or you're trying to put an organization and a process in place to be more innovative within your organization. Now, the whole purpose behind FUD is to distract an organization, distract you from taking the risk. You know you're in the middle of a FUD war when you hear terms or phrases like, quote, "We're doing just fine. Why should we risk dollars to go on some fishing expedition?" Another common term is, "There's no guarantee that this idea will work or even generate any revenue or profit." Another great one is, "Nobody before has done it this way. There's no proven success. There's nobody that we can look at that's gone down the same path and has done it successful. So why should we take the risk?" Or the last and my favorite, "We only have a limited R&D budget. We should focus it on what we know." Now, what triggers this response? What is it that gets ignited inside of people to go off and project this FUD into an organization? Well, let's break it down and look at each one of these, both the fear, the uncertainty, and the doubt. Now, what is it about fear? Well, what I find is that people tend to be fearful of change. They don't want change. They like it the way it is. They've got to the position they're in. They're comfortable. Anything that injects change means that they're at risk, and they're going to fight against any change. Secondly, though, is they're fearful of their own skill set. They got to their position with one skill set. Now, you're talking about an idea, an innovation, or putting together an organization within a business, or just trying to get your own idea out there in the market. And they may be fearful that they're not matching to your skill set, that there's a skill required that they just fundamentally don't have. The other is negative memories. They may have tried something earlier in their career that didn't work out. And what I tend to find is the negative memories are very strong. In fact, negative memories hang around a lot longer than positive memories. So again, with fear, it's fear of change. It's fear of their own skill sets. Will they have the skill set? Should your change take hold? Are they going to have a position? Are they going to have a role in this? Or they've got this negative memory. The fear comes from not from change, but because they've got this negative memory. Something's happened in the past, and they're just fearful that it's going to repeat itself. Next, let's talk about uncertainty. Now, uncertainty is kind of more of a vague area, but it's really around being the fact that it's the unknown. You're going in, if you're innovating, you're doing something that's never been done before. You can't point to previous successes. If you are, then it's really not innovation. You're trying to do some kind of an increment to the product or to the service. If you're truly breaking new ground, it's all going to come down to the fact that it's an unknown. You can't quantify the market. You can't quantify the size of the customer base. You're dealing with the fact that with this uncertainty, with organizations that don't deal well with uncertainty, you're going to run into a situation where this uncertainty just overwhelms people's ability to make a decision. Last, doubt. There could be doubt in your ability, doubt in the fundamental idea, doubt in the fact that they can't see a path to success. And again, they're using their memories. As I said before, negative memories are much stronger than positive. And they use these negative memories to build doubt into success. So you fundamentally come down to the issues of, with doubt, it's just the fact that they can't see the path. They can't see how you're going to get there from point A to point B. They can't, maybe they have doubt in your skills. Maybe they haven't seen you in this role before. Or you're trying to pitch an idea to family members, even to your spouse, and there's doubt. The key here is that you've got to deal with these things. You got to deal with not just the doubt, but with the fear, the uncertainty, and the doubt. So what is it that you can do? How do you get over this? You just don't fold up your tent and go home. How do you get over this? Well, I'm going to go through and I'm going to give you basically 7 steps or 7 things you can do to fight the FUD. First, be transparent. Don't hide the unknown. Be upfront and honest. You don't have it all worked out on how to get to ultimate success. Because in fact, in the case of where you don't know, you're going into a new area, you're going to discover it as you go. Share openly. Part of being transparent is to share openly. Don't hide anything. Don't keep anything to the side. Don't show it because it would show something in the negative light. If you are consistently transparent, you're going to build trust in the people in the fact that there's no hidden thing that they got to worry about. Everything is on the table for discussion. So number 1, and this is my rule whether you're in the innovation space or just in business in general, be transparent. Number 2, educate them. Not in a formal way, don't, hold a classroom and teach. But you need to educate them about the importance and the role of innovation. You need to tell stories of success. Stories are the best way to get people to buy into your vision. Tell stories of success. Your internal successes, go find internal success stories. People may have forgotten about the past successes that got your organization or your business to the point where it's at. Find external success stories. If you're an individual inventor and you're trying to convince the spouse to go on a journey with you towards seeing an idea come to fruition, or you're trying to go out and raise the money from the venture capitalist, find those external successes and craft them into stories. Stories are the best way. Not 30 PowerPoints with a bunch of graphs and charts. A 10-minute, very compelling, well-told story goes a long way to getting people to buy into the vision. Create the story that allows that person to put themselves into that story. They can see the success, they can see the risk, and they can see the rewards that happen at the end. As far as educating them, share what others are doing. If you've got competitors in the marketplace that are doing innovation programs, use those as benchmarks. Show what the competitors are doing. If part of educating them, point them to resources. Create an internal web page that has links to innovation resources. Point them to blogs, point them to podcasts, books, magazines. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to come off as kind of the innovation fad of the week. So this isn't just create the static and set it out there. Create a useful set of resources, but educate them. Once you've got them educated, number 3 is teach them the new skill. Now remember, as part of the fear area, in many cases, management is worried about the fact that they don't have the skill set to survive in this changing economy. Going from this information economy to the creative economy, they're not going to have the right skill set. So teach them the new skills. Show them that it doesn't mean that they become obsolete. Show them that it's a skill that can be learned, a skill that can be practiced, and a skill that you can become proficient at. But again, don't do this as a student and a teacher. Do it by showing. And one way to do this is apply an innovation skill to a particular problem that they're having within their organization. Don't always think about what they're going to give you as far as support and budget. Take the innovation skill and apply it to a specific problem that they are having. So for instance, go off and create a white space innovation map. Now, if you're not familiar with what that is, go off to the podcast site, go through the archive. There's one out there on Whitespace Innovation Maps, and go and create a Whitespace Innovation Map for your manager. If they're in a tightly, big competitive market area and the competition is really fierce and you're in a tough, industry, go and create a Whitespace Innovation Map and just give it to them. They're going to want to know how you created it. They're going to want to know how can they be, can the rest of their organization be taught how to do that? And that gets you the foot in the door to do number 3, which is teach them the new skill. In case of number 4, start small. Pick an easy project first. Don't go for the big kahunas. Don't try to go off and do the magic thing. Go and try to pick something that's easy, that's small, and that you can show success with. You don't need to be going off and creating the next product that's going to generate, $10 billion in revenue. Start small, show your ability to be successful, show them that they can have the skills that will be of value, educate them on the benefit of innovation, find something that you can show an early success to. Number 5, get them to own the ideas. Now, this is the case where I find in many new graduates, new employees, they think it's all about them getting the credit for the ideas. I guess after all my years in business, I quickly realized it really isn't about whose idea it is. It's about the impact that the idea ultimately has. So, my recommendation is go one-on-one. If you've got a particular naysayer in your organization, or even your spouse, or friends or coworkers that are really giving you that FUD effect on anything that you're trying to do, go one-on-one and share your idea. Give them kind of the nugget of an idea, some new thing that you're working on. And do kind of an ad hoc brainstorming. Don't, let's go into a conference room and get a piece of paper. We need to do, 150 idea quota. No, don't do any of that. Just do an ad hoc. Solicit their ideas. When they throw something out, build upon it. When they throw the next thing out, build upon it. Get a cycle where you two are working through an idea and just building upon and just kind of throwing things on. Maybe this is a good thing to do, Friday night at the pub. But capture their ideas and capture their contribution. Write it all down and give them 100% of the credit. Don't give it 50-50. Trust me on this. Give them 100% of the credit. Because when you give them 100% of the credit, then they'll go pitch the idea. They're going to own it. They're going to drive it. And ultimately, the rest of the organization is going to recognize the role that you played in getting this thing started. But the best way to get the naysayers into your camp is to show that you're just not there to prove that you're smarter than them, but that they have contributions, they have value. And by giving them 100% of the credit, you're rewarding them for taking that risk and stepping out and doing a new thing. Now, number 6, and this is the one that's probably the hardest, is measure and report. Measure and report. Establish your innovation metrics, measure them, and report them. Be transparent. As I said, rule number 1 and rule number 6 is be transparent. So come up with whatever your innovation metrics are going to be, whether that's number of ideas, number of patents, operating profit for products less than 3 years old, whatever your metrics are. And if you're looking for ideas, go back to the podcast archives. There was a whole podcast on how to create innovation metrics. So establish your innovation metrics, measure them, report them, and be transparent. If the metrics aren't working out, be transparent. If you try to hide it and then people find out about it later, you blow all the trust that you're trying to build up. And number 7, repeat. You will never stop doing the first 6 steps. As soon as you do, FUD will reappear, assuming that you're ever able to get rid of FUD altogether. The key here is that you've got to repeat. You got to stay on top of it. You've got to be doing all 6 of these steps. And the 6 are: 1, be transparent. 2, educate them. Don't assume that they just know about innovation. Educate them. Educate them on what the impact could be. 3, teach them the new skills. Teach them how to be creative. Teach them innovation. Teach them how to focus. Teach them how to rank order ideas. Teach them on how to drive execution. Teach them the new skills. Fourth, start small. Don't go for solving world hunger. Start small. Start with a project that you're going to prove success. 5, get them to own the ideas. It isn't about credit, it's about impact. 6, measure and report. Measure the ultimate results, but whatever you do, establish whatever your innovation metrics, measure them and report them and be transparent. And number 7, repeat. Repeat all 6 of those over and over again. And if you do this, you're going to go a long way to getting the FUD out of your organization, out of your coworkers, out of whoever's pushing back on your ideas, including yourself, and you'll have a much higher probability of being successful in creating those next killer innovations. This week's killer question is a little bit different. It's coming from a listener. A listener recently asked me, how do I deal with stress and frustrations of trying to drive innovation within, in my case, a fairly large organization? So how do you deal with all the stress and the frustration? Constantly pushing and prodding and trying to get the organization to change. Well, I'm going to give you 2 answers to this question. One is that early in my career, it was all about stress. I brought it home. And really, one of the things that got stuck in my mind is I thought that if I worked longer and I worked harder, I would solve the problem. It was all about effort. How much effort? How many hours I worked? How hard I pushed? If I stayed in there and fought the battle, I would eventually win the battle. Later, I learned about balance. It's really not about more. And in many cases, when I was looking to solve a particular problem, less actually resulted in the answer. When you're working so hard and you're putting in all those extra hours and you're trying to push against a resistant organization, it's a law of dynamics, right? The harder you push one direction, the equal and opposite pressure is going to be applied. What I have found that by taking a break, taking time, getting myself enough free time to contemplate new things, new areas, new solutions, I tend to come up with more ideas, better ideas, and typically I can solve the problem, particularly about resistance in the organization. The other is what I found later in my life is it's all about priorities. It is about work and solving the problems, and those are all important, but you've got to get your priorities straight. Now, I'm going to count this as a little bit of my mentoring for you. I've covered this in a previous podcast. If you heard that one, forgive me, I'm going to go through it again. But basically, in my own personal life, I have the rule of the 5 F's. And the 5 F's are faith, family, friends, fitness, and finance. Now, in the case of faith, whatever faith you believe in, I believe that you need to recognize that you can't do it all alone and that there is a higher power. In the case of family, family is critical. Family standing behind you, family supporting you, family enjoying the fruits of your labor from the standpoint of you being able to provide. Friends in the network, friends that you've had for a long time, friends that you can be truly transparent to, who are going to give you honest feedback, who are going to encourage you, are going to help pick you up off the ground after you've faced a particularly difficult problem or failure. Fitness. This is probably one of my weakest areas. It's also why it's probably number 4 on the list. But fitness is important. Being able, if you're going to be sharp, if you're going to be creative, if you're going to be out there coming up with new ideas, you've got to be physically and mentally sharp. You can't be dull. You can't be sloven. You can't be lazy. You've got to be out there and be active. You got to get off the couch. And then last, and the problem is many people wonder why this is last and why it isn't higher on the list, is finance. Now, what I've learned is if I focus on the top 4, the 5th one takes care of itself. It's not about focusing on the almighty dollar and letting that drive everything else you do. What I've found is if I keep my priorities straight, the times when I have been good about keeping the priorities straight, with faith, family, friends, and fitness, finances take care of themselves. And so hopefully you'll find this useful. But again, what I tend to find with people early in their career with lots of stress is they translate that into working harder, working longer, putting more energy into it, putting more pressure to try to solve the problem, pushing an organization to try to move faster or quicker. And what I have found later in my career is it's actually not about more. It's in fact about doing less. It's about not pushing, but bringing the organization along with you. Teach by leading, not teach by pushing. It isn't about how many hours you work. It is about the priorities. And the priorities for me, and they may apply to you, they may not, but the priorities that I use to keep myself, at least keep my head screwed on straight here, is faith, family, friends, fitness, and finance. This week's closing thought is really tied to this whole issue of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Now, fear, uncertainty, and doubt are indicative of our age, not our chronological age, but our mental age. General Douglas MacArthur probably said it best. You are as young as your faith, as old as your doubt, as young as your self-confidence, as old as your fear, as young as your hope, and as old as your despair. So how old are you? Thanks for listening to this week's podcast. Remember to send your comments in to podcast@killerinnovations.com. Also, feel free to contact me. You can contact me at the email address. Also, you feel free to send me an invite via LinkedIn, Facebook, or Skype. So LinkedIn, you can send it to the podcast at Killer Innovations. At Facebook, you can just do it at Phil McKinney with no spaces, or you can go to the Killer Innovations site and just click on the Facebook icon. Or you can send me a Skype. In Skype, it's Phil_McKinney. Now, if you do any of these, please note that you are a listener to the podcast, as I get lots of invites and a lot of requests to link in or to become friends on Facebook. And I tend to decline most, if not all of them, unless I know that you're a podcast listener. So please make sure that you note you are a podcast listener. Also, feel free to post comments on the site. You can go to killerinnovations.com. And for the show, you can post in the comments area, and you can share your own thoughts, your own ideas, and how you deal with FUD. Also, don't forget to vote for your favorite podcast. It's the easiest way to let the producers of the great content that you do listen to, that you truly do appreciate the time and effort they put into it. Feel free to go over to podcastalley.com or go to dig.com and vote for your favorite podcast. Also, I'm looking for ideas, topics, questions that you might have that I would be using in upcoming podcasts. So again, email those in to podcast@killerinnovations.com. Again, thanks for listening, taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to the podcast. I look forward to your feedback and thoughts. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.